Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today feels very official because I'm wearing a lapel mic. Now it's funny, as I was saying that, I stopped and thought, we're calling this official as I'm hanging out in a sports bra. But I'm in a button-down shirt, a casual button-down shirt, right? Roll with me, guys. So today I'm going to be doing a Q&A because I posted on Instagram, and I've done this fairly regularly where I'm like, let's do a Q&A, and I'll get everyone's questions. And then I kind of can tend to forget that I was going to film one. But today I realized I really wanted to finally film a Q&A. It's been a while since I've done one on here, and I have a bunch of questions from you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. Actually, part of the reason I decided to do this was because I was already dressed. I actually filmed a little mini commercial featuring my favorite bathing suits ever from Honey Mark, and I just got done working on that, and it's a super cute video. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna record this Q&A. We're gonna do it. It's been a minute. And yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. I would love to know any of your thoughts around all of this down in the comments below. And I've seen other people do this on their channels, so I'm curious if you want to share with me. I would love to know a high point of your week, or a win for your week, something that happened that you're really grateful for, something really awesome, something exciting. I feel like now that I'm asking that from you guys, I have to give you mine. I would say that my win for the week was getting 6 bags of freezer milk, of milk into the freezer this week. That's a big deal for me. But also now Lizzie has guzzled down those 6 bags that I put in there, almost all of them. But actually that is a win because I was able to save it and she was able to drink it. It's all really exciting. Actually, no, I'll tell you the win. We went to our very first homeschool group back since I was pregnant. You guys know I was down for the count when I was pregnant. Out of my socializing life while I was pregnant, we did not do a whole lot of activities. Anything that Logan did was pretty much done with my parents or with Dan. So this week we went back to our homeschooling group, and that definitely felt like a win. It was really nice for him. It was really nice for me because all of the moms in the group are friends of mine. And it just, I don't know, I'm slowly feeling more and more back to myself, not sick anymore, coming out of this postpartum era. And yeah, so now that I gave the longest intro ever, let's jump in. So the first question that I'm going to answer is actually a pretty spicy question. And this question is in regards to something I posted on Instagram, because I told you guys I got all these questions off of Instagram. And what I had posted was the fact that there have been a lot of books that have basically been banned by the Biden administration, books that Amazon has had pressure put onto them to remove off of their platform. And it's a list of, I don't even remember, 20 to 30 anti-vaxx books basically. And that's really frustrating. So I shared it because a part of what I don't appreciate about book bannings or just information banning in general is how are people ever supposed to know what the other side is even trying to say if you ban the content that the other side is putting out. So I posted that, and then this person said to me, do you feel the same way about banned books on vax and anti-vax books as banned books on LGBTQ plus families? So this question kind of feels like a twofold question to me. First off, obviously, these are different issues for a few different reasons, obviously just different topics. Also, I will say, well, let me answer the general question. The general answer to the question is probably going to disappoint some of my Christian followers, but I have to be honest as to what I feel in my gut. And even though I don't feel the same way in terms of the fact that I'm not out there passionately advocating for LGBTQIA plus books, in a general way, I kind of feel the same in the sense that I don't know, it's a complicated question because we live in a secular society right now. So I don't like when people try to shut down viewpoints that I have, information that could be out there regarding those viewpoints. It really bothers me, but I'm not bothered by there not being enough LGBTQ books for kids out there. Part of this feels like an argument around the public school system and what books children should be exposed to in school. You guys already know I'm not into the public school system. I'm into homeschooling. That's the plan as of right now. So in a general way, I feel the same in the sense of free speech, right? I am a free speech advocate. I don't feel the same though in the sense what I just said. I'm not out here trying to make sure those books get into the hands of families. But as a general sentiment, yeah, I'm anti not free speech. I'm anti-censorship. Now, the other reason it feels weird to compare these two things, besides the fact that they're just like not the same thing, on top of that, a big reason that I'm so passionate about anti-vax content not being suppressed is because with the whole vax debate, they're trying to mandate them, right? So they're trying to force us to essentially take these injections. And that's a very different situation than what's going on with the LGBTQ stuff. And so for that reason, mainly, that's why I'm so passionate about it. I mean, we all saw what happened a few years ago. Yes, we were not all mandated to take the COVID vax, but I mean, like, is there a few steps away from that? Like high pressure. And so because of all of that, I think that people have the right to know what their options are, what's in front of them, and what they should choose. And if all you're hearing are the experts from one side of the situation of the story, then of course you're going to think, well, yeah, the experts are saying this, like it's safe and effective. But if you don't even know that there's all these other experts out there with a different opinion, you know, you're not going to know. Now, I will say on this topic, if I'm like sparking your interest, because I have been getting questions from people lately on my Instagram about these. And I keep telling people kind of the same thing, to check out Del Bigtree from the High Wire. That's a great place to start. Candace Owens, A Shot in the Dark. Her series is another good place to start. There are a lot of anti-vax books out there that are not censored, but I haven't read them. Like most of my consumption has been from video content. Now, something that I will say about Del Bigtree along those lines of like, these experts say this and these experts say that. And people go, well, what's the scientific consensus? Del Bigtree actually had a debate with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know if it was super recently, but the full debate is available on YouTube. I watched all 2.5 hours, and it is an incredible debate. Mostly, not really because the debate's that incredible, because in my opinion, it really wasn't. I don't think that Neil deGrasse Tyson did a very good job of actually answering the questions or addressing any of the points that Del made. Now, to his defense, and he says this a lot in there, like he's not a vax scientist, he's not a doctor, right? He's a scientist, and he's an advocate for the general principle of scientific consensus and trying to educate the public on how scientific consensus becomes a thing, like what the scientific process looks like. But what I think that debate does excellently is it showcases that, in my opinion, the scientific consensus is actually broken, especially in our country, because of lobbyists, because of big corporations, crony capitalism. I don't think it's that simple. And so all of that to say, that is why I'm very passionate about anti-vax books not being censored, because you deserve to know. You should know that there is a whole other side to that narrative. And at this point, we still have the freedom to decline Vs, especially depending on what state you live in. But I don't know, a lot of people don't want us to have that right. They think that by us not choosing to V, we are essentially not taking part of, we are like breaking our vow in our social contract, like with society. And I mean, they talk about that in the debate too. I don't agree with that at all, specifically because I don't trust scientific consensus at this point for, in my opinion, and points that Del makes in the video, very valid reasons. So that was I feel like that was long. And also, like, did I answer the question? Either way, we're going to move on to the next question. Someone asked me, what has been the most surprising change about going from 1 child to 2? Also, that's obnoxious. Our neighbors like digging into the mountain, and I'm realizing now you could probably totally hear that. That sound wasn't happening a few minutes ago. I don't know how long that's going to go on. We might have to like switch locations. You might not be able to hear it because I've got my fancy lapel. Anyways, here's what I'll say to that question. She just got here. So it's kind of like when people have asked how Logan is adjusting, and I'm like, she just got here, like fine. Kind of the same thing. She just got here. So to be like, let me tell you about the difference between 1 and 2 children. Kind of like when someone asked me the other night what my advice would be to new moms. I was like, I mean, I'm practically still a new mom. I gave my answer, which was essentially to follow your gut. I like expanded upon it a little more than that, but that was essentially the answer. So kind of the same thing. I will say, here is what has been the most surprising change right now, going from 1 child to 2, is how easy it's been. That's really my answer. Like, it's how easy it's been. I think a big part of that is because she's still basically a newborn. She's 3 months old. So she spends a lot of time asleep. So I think that's part of it. But also, so far, like, her personality is just like really chill. Like I remember Logan being a lot feistier than this, even as a newborn. So that's probably, I guess, the short answer is it's just been so much easier than I thought so far. But like I said, I'm 3 months in. So someone said, do you know who you're going to vote for in the upcoming election? Yes, I am definitely voting for Trump. I would like to, in some alternate reality, vote for RFK, mostly because I really admire the way that he has spearheaded general public awareness around vaccine injuries and the fact that maybe vaccines aren't exactly everything that we've thought that they've been for the last century. And maybe there are unknown consequences stemming from the vaxes, which is what I believe. So in theory, I would want to vote for him for that reason, but he's never going to win, would be my guess. Like it's going to be Trump. And if I have to vote between Trump or a Democrat, I'm going to end up voting for Trump, mostly because I am pro-life. Now, granted, you've probably heard everyone talk about this. It's not like Trump has the greatest pro-life stance by any means. He's planning on bringing it back to the States. But also at the same time, I can't fully be mad about that, even though, yes, I am kind of mad about that because I'm pro-life. That's also very in line with, I guess, conservative values as well, to allow the states to make these decisions. I still think that that's wimpy and lame, based on my own personal values. But, so point being, yeah, I'm going to be voting for Trump. You guys know that I'm kind of the camp where I don't even know how much I trust elections. Like, I don't even know if our vote matters at all. Like, if we are actually a democracy, and I know that we're a democratic republic, but I don't know if we're actually a democracy or not. But like, I'm very, in the words of my mother, I'm very jaded about the political system and media and entertainment in general. I think that our medical industrial complex, the media, the government, the schools, they're all kind of, the police, the military, I think they're all kind of holding hands. That's not an insult to anyone as a person, like doctors or nurses or police officers or teachers. It's not an insult to them as a person, but the systems, I think, are all holding hands. And that's part of what makes for a lot of corruption, in my opinion. But even though I feel that way, and Dan feels that same way too, we always joke, although it's not fully a joke, that like we could be totally wrong. So we're still going to show up and vote just in case we're wrong and just in case our vote really does matter. But it's hard to really think that your vote even really matters from my perspective. Yeah. And also someone wanted me to talk about the assassination attempt on Trump. I might talk about that on Patreon. I feel like I'm going to get a little more like conspiratorial sounding if I start talking about that on here. I mean, whatever. I just don't know that I want to go off on that rant right now. I'll pick my next question from the list. But I think I am going to make that video. So if you want to check out my Patreon, that'll be linked down below. I talk about a lot of spicy things over there, and I just upload a lot of exclusive content in general over on Patreon. So if you want to check that out, I have like a whole library of videos and podcasts that I've been putting up there for the last few years. And yeah, someone asked about our vax schedule for my babies, and we don't vaccinate, like at all, zero. I still have the freedom to say that. I'm allowed to say that. A lot of moms ask me questions. You should not do what I do, obviously, just because I do it. Like, don't do that. Don't follow someone just because you like them and they're doing something. But that is the honest answer if you're asking me. Zero vaccines ever. No, I don't feel bad about that. Yes, I am very convicted that that was the right move for us, our family, and just based on my general opinion of vaccines. Something that I think that you guys should know, particularly if you are a believer, if you're a Christian, I'm going to try to find the video and link it down below. But you should be aware that pretty much every single vaccine, as far as I know, at least all the main ones, including the recent COVID vax, the MMR, polio, all of those vaccines were built off of basically the cell lines of aborted babies. So you have to know that abortion is involved or was involved in the vaccine making process. And this video that I'm going to link down below, a big point that they make, because a lot of people will say things like, oh, well, that was a long time ago and they're not used anymore, which is not totally true. But also, part of the thing with that is like, does something suddenly not become wrong just because it was in the past? Like, oh, it was long enough ago that it's suddenly not wrong, or it isn't as sad. And yeah, remind me if I forget to link that video. You will cry probably, especially if you're a believer and you are pro-life. But yeah, No vaccines up in his house for us. Someone asked, are you still friends with many other YouTubers or with other YouTubers from many years ago? So the answer to that question is yes and no. I have like a lot of YouTube friends that I've known for a very long time, like my whole time on YouTube. And I have a lot of YouTube friends that I've made within the last like 6 years or so, since leaving LA, moving to Nashville, kind of becoming more and more conservative. I've always been conservative. You know, I've met a lot of people who like grew up in the cities and they were very liberal, and then they got married and had kids, and then they became conservative. That was not my story. If you've been following me forever, I was always on the conservative side of the spectrum. Dan and I got married at like 20 virgins to each other. And does that really matter? It's kind of part of it. You know what I mean? But I've realized as time has gone on, I've definitely become like way more conservative. And looking back, I can see some of the things that I deem to be lies now that I fell for, particularly in the line of like, why would I need to have children? I don't need to duplicate my DNA. The earth is overpopulated. We're running out of resources. There's nothing special about my DNA. Why have children when you can just adopt? Now, one day that might be a whole video in and of itself, because I feel like there's a lot to that. Obviously, I just kind of casually dropped some things. There's a lot to that. So there's just a lot of things, that being one of them, that I feel like as time has gone on, I see it as like more of a right-wing thing, and like I fell for more of a left-leaning ideology because it was attached to an entire worldview that once I went down the wormhole, not only through like life experience, you guys know we were looking at adopting for years. My brother is adopted, but once we went down those wormholes, both in our real life and on the internet, and I started watching people from essentially the other side of those arguments making their presentations, I was pretty blown away. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm pretty right wing now. And all of that to say is, as I have become more of a right wing extremist, and also after going through our cancellation a few years ago, everything that happened when we put down our dog, and then when people totally flipped the whole narrative on our adoption journey, that definitely changed my friendships with quite a few YouTubers. I mean, quite a few of the people who drug us through the mud were people that I naively thought we were friends with, and then they just took to the internet and smeared us. And so, I mean, those are obvious people, right? You can tell who I am and am not friends with. And there were some people who, when everything went down, just like dropped us like a hotcake, like, or me, did not want anything to do with me, like went from talking to me to like literally just unfollowing me, never saying another word to me. Some of those people would surprise you if I felt like outing names, but I'm not going to. But yeah, so yes and no. On the flip side, since I've become more of a right-wing extremist and since the whole cancellation, I've also become friends with like a whole other slew of YouTubers and Instagrammers and bloggers. And that's been really exciting because obviously, not only because of everything that we went through, but also since leaving California and becoming a parent, I'm much more passionate about some of these views because of everything we've gone through and what I've seen and experienced and researched and all of that. And so those friendships have been really exciting to make. Just like being up here and meeting so many like-minded people, that's just not what my background was. You guys know I grew up in Los Angeles, in the melting pot of LA, and I love that for so many reasons. But in other ways, there were things I didn't like that I really didn't know I didn't like till I left. And one of those things is being surrounded by so many believers, so many Christians, so many homeschool moms, so many people who are like woke to the vaccine thing, like just so many like-minded people. And that was harder to find in LA. It's actually hard to believe looking back. It's like, wow, I had like my friends from church, even still my friends from church, just different viewpoints. Los Angeles is a different world in a lot of ways. And I'm positive if you're watching, there are for sure conservative Christian people living in Los Angeles. But I can tell you, it's also very different outside of LA. So, man, I give long answers, people. Someone asked, speaking of which, is Idaho your forever state, or are you planning on moving? So first off, I feel like I can't ever give an answer to anything being my like forever anything, because you just don't know, right? Like there's so much that happens in life you can't predict. Also, I have moved an obnoxious amount of times. even if I was like, yes, this feels like my forever state, I also don't trust myself to say that. My whole family jokes about that. They're like, we can't trust you for any of this. I'm like, I know, don't trust me. So I don't know. I have times where I think it is because I love the people up here so much. Like I said, I can't believe that I've met so many like-minded people. I have wondered before if part of that is due to the internet, though, like bringing together people that are like-minded, because a lot of my friends that I've met up here that are like-minded, although honestly, the whole town has got to be like 80% conservative. Like we are definitely the majority. But even my friends I have up here, I met through the internet. So part of me is like, meh, we're in a new day and age. If you moved somewhere else, you would still find like-minded people. But just like marriage, there's something beautiful. Like the longer you're married, it's like, wow, you have all this history together. I think the same thing is true with friends. And so for that reason and many others, I don't really want to move again. But I do have moments, particularly deep winter, like end of winter, where I'm like looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, you really going to live here forever, Nikki? You really going to live here forever? Yeah, so I definitely have moments where I'm like, I don't know. Am I really going to be able to live in this snowy weather for the rest of my life? Like, am I going to be an old lady here, like by myself in the snow? I say that meaning like when my parents die one day. I don't know. I just get a little bit ahead of myself. And honestly, even that, there have been points where I'm like, if both of my parents dropped dead, this is dark, right? But I'm like, would I still be living in Idaho? Like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I kind of think I would want to be near family, especially if none of my other family moved up by that point. I have other family members that are considering moving out this way. And if they were here, that would be a different story. But the idea of like being alone out here, even though I know we were alone for a while in Tennessee before my sisters came out, which it's so weird that both of my sisters are out there now and we're not. I just don't know. And that really is the thing. Every time I start getting carried away, like I've gone on this rant before to like my mom, my mother-in-law, everyone just ends up looking at me and they're like, stop, don't talk about it. Just take it as it comes. You'll see. So someone asked me about the cold weather, but I can't really understand the question. I think she's saying cold weather and your health. I heard it can be helpful. I crave it sometimes. I don't know. I like having seasons. That's the other thing. Even though deep winter, I'm like over it. I felt over it deep winter in Nashville too, like by the end. At the same time, that is a small part of the reason why we moved. I was so sick of like sunshine 24/7. I was like, I need some seasons up in here. And I do love having the seasons. I will say seasons make life fly by faster. Other than deep winter when you're over it, you just feel like, man, it really makes you aware. Seasons and kids, man. Seasons and kids make the time fly faster. And it makes you really aware of just how short time is, because then all of a sudden you're on to the next season. So yeah. Now, someone asked me update on cloth diapers and LV pump. Okay, I'm hoping by this point I have a code, because I finally got a hold of LV. I was like, LV, I'm obsessed with you. I worked with you the first time around. Can I please get a discount code? People are asking me, and it looks like it's going to happen. So if I have it, I will leave it down below. And that obviously gives away how I feel about my LV pump. I'm obsessed. I love my LV so much. If you guys remember, maybe like a couple of months ago, actually 3 of my LVs, I had 4 when I had Logan, the motors were broken. And so I needed new pumps, and I didn't want to get the LVs because they're very pricey. And my mother-in-law ended up gifting me with some pumps from Mom Cozy. And I was very excited to get them. I'm like, dude, this is rad. These are like super cheap. People are going to be so stoked to learn about this. Can't wait to share with you guys. And I used them, and they were horrible. Like, I'm talking, I did like a half-hour pump, and I got half an ounce out of each boob. Okay, to put that in perspective, when my boobs are really full, I can get upwards of 7 ounces in like 10 minutes from my Spectra. So needless to say, I was over those pumps. We returned them, and I was like, I have to go back to my LVs. It doesn't matter if they're more expensive. I have to go back to them. So I came running back to my LVs, and they're incredible. I get just as much out of those pumps as I do from my Spectra. And the Spectra, as you guys may or may not know, is like a hospital grade pump. So to get that much out of portable pumps is like bananas. Now, I have to say, I'm going to do a video all about pumping, because I feel like you guys need like the deets on this, because the LVs are amazing by themselves. But for my boobs, I actually had to customize them a little bit. And I learned about this customization process through a Facebook like pumping page for LVs. And yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, I get just as much milk as I do out of my Spectra. So obsessed. Now, as far as cloth diapering, we are still cloth diapering, but I still haven't bought new cloth diapers yet because I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So they're still holding up. We need new cloth diapers. They're kind of like soaking through a little more easily. They were smelling, although we washed them with extra baking soda the other day and they're doing better now. So I don't know. Cloth diapering is just very easy for me. I know a lot of people feel really like burdened by cloth diapering or overwhelmed. I feel the opposite at this point. Now, anytime that changes, we could make the switch or we will make the switch. Like I'm not just determined to do cloth diapers no matter what, but I like them and I like them because we had them. They're already here. You don't have to go like, oh, don't forget, go buy the diapers. I like that they're just fabric, even though I know there's a lot of non-toxic diapers that are disposable now, and I'll probably be dipping my toes into those. There's, there's a lot more stuff. You're really trusting them that they didn't like put all those things on there versus just using, fabric. And I feel kind of passionate about that as well, like not sticking super intense chemicals on our baby's private parts when they're first born, or at all, I guess. So yeah, that's how everything's going. Oh, someone asked how milk production's been going this time around, and it's been going well. I'm not an oversupplier by any means. So we haven't had to use any formula yet, which I'm really grateful for because I don't want to have to use formula if possible. We've talked about this, right? This whole like fed is best thing. Obviously, fed is best. I feel like that's what's so weird about that whole thing is you're just like, isn't that like a duh? But of course the bottom line is just like feed the baby. Like it's weird that we made a slogan, but I know people made the slogan because women felt bad about, like I can't do breast. Breast is best. I think breast is best. I think second place after breast is pumping. I think after that is formula. And that's just from like a health hierarchy, not from like a guilting you into anything. Like literally everyone is in a situation in life where it's like you just do your best and you take it from there. And I don't think anyone should feel guilty if they have to use formula. Like it is what it is. But I think it's also weird to ignore like the obvious hierarchy that exists within food options for your baby. So that being said, I'm not an oversupplier. Like for me to get those bags of milk in the freezer last week was like, what? Like totally a miracle because I'm pretty much just solely keeping up with her. Now, I think the reason I got those bags in is because it's been super hot here. It's actually really funny that I'm even in this. I debated like switching because I was like, it's a little toasty and I don't really want to just be in my sports bra right now. But I kept it on. I'm in the shade. But it's super hot. And I think that has slowed down her milk consumption a little bit for those days, or it did slow it down. So I was able to get ahead. Now she's chugging it back up. I'm just trying to keep up is the point. I am not one that ever really wanted a big freezer stash because I've heard from people that an oversupply can be really obnoxious to deal with too. And I don't even know what I would have to do to make that happen because I already feel like I'm doing all the things and like it's just like a marathon to keep up. And I'm keeping up. I'm on my schedule. I pump 7 times in a 24-hour period. And I'm now at the point where I only pump once in the middle of the night. So before bed, I'm usually pumping between 10 and 10:30 is my final pump. And then I'm usually pumping at around 3 or 4 a.m. And then I pump again when I wake up at like 7 or 8, depending on the timing. But yeah, it's going well. I'm just really thankful to God that I've been able to be her sole source of food so far. And I'm so grateful for pumps. Like literally, I don't know, I guess if it was the past, it would have either been formula. If it was like when my mom had me, I was a formula baby, or it would have been like a wet nurse. I don't even know because my back took such a beating from just those few weeks of pumping. And I started pumping earlier this time than I did with Logan because my mom and Dan were like, get off this train now. Like you are showing signs of injury, like don't push it any further. And I'm really glad that they did that because sure enough, I honestly do still have a little bit of a back injury that I'm recovering from those few weeks of breastfeeding back when Lizzie was first born. Breastfeeding is intense and people like to give lots of advice, which is great, but it's awkward when you're like, I've already heard that advice. So thanks. So I've tried sideline breastfeeding. I worked with a lactation consultant. The juggling of a person onto my boob just doesn't work for me and my back. So I'm very grateful for my pumps. Like so grateful. Someone said, what have you been more laxed about with baby number 2 versus baby number 1? Okay, so this is easy. This is the first thing that I think about, and that's the feeding situation. With Logan, I was setting an alarm like every 2 hours to wake up in the middle of the night. And I was so committed to breastfeeding early on in the beginning, but I didn't know how to do it. So Dan would wake up with me every 2 hours to help me feed him. And he would help me like rub my boobs, because I had a way rougher time like getting into breastfeeding with Logan than I did this time around with Lizzie. I think part of it is just like anatomical, like my body is more used to it now. Part of it is just your brain, like I'm more used to it now. I've had to have just way less help in general this time around with Lizzie than I did with Logan, like from Dan. Dan really like carried me into motherhood the first time around. I've told this to my mom multiple times. I brought it up about a month ago again, and I started crying. I was like, don't you ever let me forget, because every time I think about what Dan did for me going into motherhood, like it's amazing. He's a man, he's not a woman, but he taught me how to be a mom in some ways, especially to a newborn. And I will never forget that. I pray I will never forget that, because, you know, every woman is different. Every family is different. Not every woman needs what I needed, but I needed that. And he literally just held my hand going into motherhood and helped me figure out the milk making thing and the waking up in the middle of the night thing and just all of it. And so this time I've been more lax, not only because I feel more comfortable, I don't need his help as much in all of that, but also I'm not so panicked about her eating this time around. Like before it was like, they've told me to wake up every 2 hours, which I'm not telling you not to. This is just me sharing my situation. Obviously, all of this is just like we're friends hanging out in the backyard. None of it's professional advice. But this time around, I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I trust my baby to tell me when she's hungry, or like I trust my instinct to vibe when my baby is hungry. And that's a big thing in general. Like someone asked me advice for mamas. Oh, that's entering toddlerhood. Oh, I thought she meant new mamas. But that's what I said to the new mamas in the Instagram questionnaire or Q&A. I said, follow your gut. Mother's intuition is legit. And you are going to feel things towards your child. Now, it can get a little hazy, I'm not going to lie, sometimes, because you can get like postpartum anxiety. I've struggled with that a little bit at points. But in general, if you vibe something, like follow that. Follow your vibe on like, is my baby hot? Is my baby cold? Does my baby need milk? Does my baby need to keep sleeping? Like follow your gut, because you guys, I truly think, are like energetically connected. And in some ways, I think that sounds hippie and woo-woo-wee-wah. And in other ways, I just don't think it is. I think it only makes sense. Like this baby came from you. And there are so many things that happen in life that like we can't see. Can't see the Wi-Fi that's connecting my video to your screen right now. And I know that's a little different, but it's not. And I don't think everything is measurable or quantifiable, especially by science and especially at this point in history. So yeah, why did I start? 1 versus 2. Yes, I'm working on continuing to trust my intuition more. That's definitely a lesson that I learned in general through my whole pregnancy, was like following my gut, following my heart, doing what I feel like the Lord is leading me to do, and not needing so much affirmation from outside sources. So yeah. Okay. Someone asked, do you think you may explore the adoption route again? That's part 2 of the same question. This person said, do you see yourself and Dan trying for more kids, or do you think 2 is perfect? And then the continuation was, or do you think you may explore the adoption route again? I don't know. Like my initial like reaction is, we're not done. I've said that to my mom. It's like that had actually made me cry quite a few times over the last couple of months, because there is part of me that if you asked me if we were done, I'd be like, no, I want to try again. But thinking of trying again after that pregnancy is like nightmarish, literally, and could bring me to tears and onto my knees right now. Yet at the same time, I'm not the giver of life. Like God is the giver of life. So it also, I say that so hesitantly, because if God blessed us with another child, like I'd put on my big girl pants and praise the Lord and deal with it. You know what I mean? So I say it hesitantly, but my experience was so hard. The thought of going through that again, like I don't know if we're going to purposefully try again. I'm not sure. I can't answer that right now. I think I've said this though before. They say, a lot of moms, they say like, don't talk about having more kids when you're pregnant or freshly postpartum. I resonate with that. And in regards to adoption, it's the same answer that I've given since we paused our adoption process, or I guess stopped it for the time being. And that was, I don't know, we're definitely open. I mean, that was like a dream of ours for multiple reasons. And, you know, I mentioned to you guys, though, we saw a lot, we learned a lot about the foster care system, about adoption, both internationally and in the States. Our eyes were opened to a lot of things, and our reasons for not adopting were totally misconstrued. But that being said, if we were to go down that path again, I don't think we would pursue any of the paths that we did before. Meaning, I don't know that we would go through like official, like through the foster system or through an adoption agency necessarily. I think it would have to be more of a situation where there was a need within the community and it was like a personal thing. In theory, I like the idea of an open adoption. That's something I've become more convicted over if that's something that we were to ever venture into again. Yeah, basically point being is it's not something that it's like, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. And it's not something that it's like, yes, 100% we're going that way. It's something that we're like, okay, the Lord put this feeling on our heart many years ago. The paths we were going down were not the right paths for us for many different reasons. But we're open to seeing what God has for us. And, you know, when we stopped the adoption process, one of those reasons was because I'd come to the conclusion that I, in fact, was not ready to wave goodbye to my fertility. And I'm still kind of in that window where, like, if we're going to have more kids, I'm still kind of in this, like, I mean, now granted, who knows? My period's probably going to be around for like another decade or so, maybe even longer than that, especially because I started so much later. I didn't even get my period till I was basically 18. But our head is still kind of in that space of like, okay, we're still kind of like in the, like I said, I'm hesitant about it because of everything I just said before, but we're still kind of in that range of like, do we want more biological children? And I don't think I can pretty much say with confidence, I mean, unless God placed the situation in front of us and it was obvious, okay, this is what the Lord's calling us to, I don't think we would pursue adoption in this season where we're still wondering if we're going to have biological children. So one step at a time, we're open, and yeah. Someone asked if we still have Zoe, and yes, we still have Zoe. I bet Zoe's going to live. Like, Yorkies live a long time, or they can live a long time. I would not be surprised if Zoe was around for like another 5 years. Like, maybe not, because she's getting old. She's like 13. But I just wouldn't be surprised if she was hanging around for another 5 years. She's doing well. They specifically asked along the lines of like Zoe, they said, how is she doing with a toddler and a newborn? Zoe likes her space. Obviously with a newborn, she's not like, she doesn't like try to go after Lizzie or anything, but she definitely likes her space from Logan from time to time. Logan loves her so much and always wants to play with her. And sometimes she's down, but sometimes she's like, yo, you're 4 and you're crazy. Like, no thanks. So yeah, but she's still kicking it. Cute as can be. Still looks like a tiny puppy. Every time we take her for a walk and people see her, they're like, how old is she? And we're like, she's 13. And they're like, what? So still looking like a puppy. Okay, someone asked, how does your new Idaho home compare to your Nashville home? So our Nashville home was much nicer because it was brand new. When we moved into it, we were the first people to live in that home, and everything was like upgraded and super nice. But our Idaho home, I like smashing it together, is super nice too, but for totally different reasons. So our property here in Idaho is bigger than our property in Nashville. Our backyard is like honestly 5 times the size of our Nashville backyard. So that's pretty awesome. But our Nashville backyard, we had more set up. Like we have so much to set up in this home, guys. It's crazy, including our garden. Actually, right off to the left of me is where I'm hoping, we'll see how it pans out, but I'm hoping next year Dan is going to be able to build me, like right here off the kitchen, a garden with some gardening beds. And then I want to like string lights above it and whatever. I have this whole cute little idea. So our garden in Nashville was more fleshed out. We didn't have really any renovations to do. Now, granted, Dan did turn our porch into a bonus room, but that was just kind of an extra thing. Whereas this house is much older. It was built in like the late 80s, early 90s, I think. And when we came in, you guys know, we like gutted a lot and redid a bunch of things. And honestly, we still have a lot of things that we want to redo that are just like old or falling apart, not super cute. Our bathrooms being one of those things. Like we did our floors in the bathrooms and we got new toilets in the bathrooms, but our counters, our cupboards, our light fixtures, all of that is just much older. I would love to update it if possible. Oh, the other thing, our Nashville home obviously was 2 stories and our Idaho home is 1 story and maybe like half the size. Like it's much smaller, but I kind of like it better that way. And the reason I say that, I don't know if you guys know who Rachel Jankovic is. She is the daughter of Doug Wilson, who's a pastor of Christ Church up in Moscow, up here in Idaho. And he also founded like New St. Andrews College and whatever, a bunch of other things, Canon Press, blah, blah, blah. So his daughter, Rachel, she made a comment in a podcast once where they were like, what is your advice for young new moms? And she was like, honestly, live in a 1-story small house. And they started laughing and they were like, she just was saying it's so much easier to clean in a 1-story small house. And I have to say, I agree, because someone else asked me on here, they said, how do you get things done with 2 kids? My house is a mess and I'm throwing supper together every night. And I have to say, mine is too. Like even in this tiny 1-story house, things are still messy. It just is, right? Newborn life is crazy. Toddler life is crazy. And so having a smaller house at least makes it more manageable. Because we basically live in like a large apartment. That's like how big our house is. I think it's like 1,300 square feet. I don't know. I could be rounding down a little bit. I think that's around the size of it. But yeah, it's just nice having not so much space to deal with. Also, when we moved out here, a bunch of our stuff got lost in the move. That's a whole other thing. So we didn't have a bunch of stuff to decorate a house with. So it's just been nice that it's been smaller, but it has been an adjustment. Okay, these 2 other questions. Someone asked, is Dan working outside of the home now? If so, how is the transition to having 2 kids solo going? That was the first question. And then someone asked, how are you finding balance in life, work, marriage, and having a newborn? So first off, yes, Dan is working outside of the home. How do I explain this? Okay, so when everything went down with us on the internet a few years ago, one of the main things that occurred to me was I was like, yo, I don't ever want to be solely reliant on the internet again. Like even if our internet presence or our income from working online is, whoa, big bug, is much higher than before, I don't want that ever again because it was traumatizing. We learned a lot through that. And I just realized, okay, we need some like real life connections and income too. And so that was a big part of it. And Dan started working outside of the house because of that. He actually has his own contractor's business. So he's working as a contractor. He's working as a handyman. He's doing like all kind. Basically, Dan is like literally a jack of all trades. And he's been working in this capacity like pro bono for like all of the neighbors and families and family and friends and all of that for like ever. So now he basically charges for it and has his business. And the cool thing is though, at least as of right now, he has his own business and he's been working freelance. So even though sometimes he's gone, some weeks he's gone every single day, some weeks he's home all week and then he'll be gone for like a couple hours. It's really like flexible at this point, and that's the way that we're hoping to keep it because I like flexibility. We've been self-employed for like a decade now, and so we really like the flexibility that comes along with that. I will say having 2 kids solo some days has been hard. The days that it's been the hardest have been when he's gone multiple days in a row, when it's like, okay, we're on day 4 now, which I know this sounds lame because a lot of women do this by themselves all the time, but just bear with me, okay? We've been working from home for a long time. At that point in the week, sometimes it will get harder, but it really hasn't been that hard. I think partially because Lizzie is so little right now, and partially because we live next door to my parents. So having my parents right there helps a lot because if I ever do need anything, they're there to help me. If, we only have 1 car right now. When we came out here from Nashville, we got rid of our other car, came with 1 car. And that's helpful too, because if I need to go somewhere, I just borrow my parents' car. So yeah, I'm actually hearing baby. I think she's waking up from her nap. So I have to like land the plane soon. Someone asked me, how do you stay strong in your faith and not feel betrayed by God when awful things happen? So maybe this is like way too deep of a last question for this video. We'll see. First off, I just want to say awful things and pain and all of that is very relative. So the worst pain that I've ever felt might be like nothing compared to the worst pain that you've ever felt. Like I said, it's all relative. Like my worst is my worst and your worst is your worst. That being said, part of how I've coped over the years has been coming to this conclusion that I believe that everything happens for a reason, even horrible things. And I know for some people that is actually not a cope. It actually makes them mad to think about that. For me, that actually gives me comfort. Like if I think of life and God as the ultimate storyteller and my life is just a vapor in the timeline, I think that there are things that happen to us, relationships that we develop, relationships that end, health issues, when people die, work things, all of these things that happen that sometimes we may not even see the results, the fruit, the consequences, whatever of all of those things, even in our lifetime. But I have to believe that God is the ultimate storyteller and he has strung everything together and kind of like a butterfly effect, right? Everything touches everything. So that's part of how I've coped with things in my mind. Like, okay, hard things, bad things happen for a reason. And I may not be able to understand them now or potentially ever in my life, but I have to believe it is happening for a reason, whether it's for my character development and my growth, whether it's for, like I said, something that I can never know. It's going to affect someone else in my life, or someone that I have to interact with. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I hesitate to say this because I don't think I've really been through that horrible of things. But like I said, I know it's all relative because I've also talked to other people when I've told them things I've gone through and they're like, I can't imagine. And I'm like, really? Because I can't imagine what you've gone through. So yeah, it's a little weird because I ultimately believe that God is in control of everything. And I don't think that means that we're just like robots or that like he's like controlling everything that we do. But at the same time, I do believe God is in control. And so, you know, it's changed my prayer life a little bit since I've really like believed that, because now, yes, I tell God like what I want, but I always tell him and I'm like, you already know what I want. Like you already see my heart, but I'm still going to say this out loud and bring it to you. And I'll tell him what I want. But then I'll be like, also though, ultimately, Lord, whatever you have for me, please shape my heart to make me genuinely like okay with what you have for me, and maybe even like joyful or at peace with what you have for me. And that's easier said than done. But honestly, that's what I pray a lot, because I've had a lot of times where I've prayed for things and that is not what has come true. And that has actually made me feel more bitter than just accepting the path that God has for me and praying for acceptance and for peace and understanding versus like, oh, well, I really wanted that and why didn't I get that? And then I can feel kind of upset. Okay, guys, so honestly, I want to just keep going because there's more really great questions in here. And I really hope that you don't feel like left out or abandoned by me not answering your question. Not abandoned. I'm sure none of you feel abandoned, but like, why didn't mine get answered? I will try and do another Q&A again here in the future. I don't know. I always think like maybe I'll do a part 2 and answer the rest of the questions. It's just hard to decide, you know? But I hope that something in this video was able to like bring you encouragement or give you some direction or lighten your mood a little bit. Although that was a kind of deep question at the end to say that I hope it lightens your mood. So I got to go grab Lizzie. I hope you guys have a good day. God willing, I will see you guys back here soon with another new video. And that's that. Bye, guys.